ordinarily have made more of an effort. It is an important issue that I honestly never thought we ever would have to take seriously. The idea that children could be induced into hating themselves to the point of wanting to do anything except be in their own bodies. I remember back, and it was about 2014, 2015, and we first heard about Target permitting men in women's dressing rooms and women's bathrooms. And what do? We said, and I said on the air, no way. That's not going to happen. Are you kidding me? The first guy who walks into a dressing room of a man's daughter is going to go out on a stretcher. That's what I said. I thought there's no way, because the dads of America are never going to let this happen. I said it on the air out loud. I laughed about it, but this was when the Obama administration had decided to issue guidance in the form of what were called Dear Colleague letters to schools. I thought, they've jumped the shark. They've gone too far this time. That's typical. When you've got radicals, they're always reaching for another cookie in the cookie jar. This time they knocked the jar off the shelf. Could I have been more wrong? Could any of us have been more wrong? What we didn't see the organization, we didn't see the money, we didn't see the access to power that was available to anyone who wanted to promote the idea to young people that, number one, they can hate who they are, and number two, they can become anything else. Physically, whatever, emotionally. And we all just kind of shrugged our shoulders and thought it was just a weird thing that weird people did, and it's nothing to worry about. And I remember Bill Maher rolling his eyes and essentially saying this is going to be a problem that solved itself. And every single adult who stayed silent is the reason why young people now are going to be sitting up in front of you telling stories about how their parents didn't say what they needed to say. They didn't feel empowered. They trusted experts. The experts didn't do what they were supposed to do and guide people to make the right and healthy and common sense choices. Nobody was willing to just do anything except laugh in the beginning. And because that's how we were as a culture, we now have thousands, tens of thousands of kids, boys and girls, who have been isolated, atomized by their digital screens, by their educational environments, by the medical institutions, into mistrusting their parents, and worse, their parents now have mistrusted themselves. And all we ever had to do was not laugh and instead show up and say no. I'm going to introduce you to some of the people you're going to hear from today who have gone through experiences they never should have gone through. And collectively, the adults, not specifically the adults, but collectively the adults in this room are part of the reason why. Luka Hein is a 22-year-old woman who detransitioned as a teenager. She now shares her experiences online and talks about navigating life after detransitioning. It makes me sad that anybody has to actually do that, but I'm really pleased she is. She can be found at One Done Bun on Instagram, and I recommend anyone, but it's in your programs. Chloe Cole is also with us tonight. Chloe is a poised and articulate 19-year-old young woman who is looking smoking, I must say tonight. I love your outfit. It's so punk rock. Who now passionately advocates against the practice of transitioning of minors. She's driven by a noble mission to now safeguard children from potential harmful ideologies and medical interventions. And she draws from her own experiences to shed light on the distressing consequences of gender-affirming care for adolescents. Sorry, I should have been more prepared. Abel Garcia. As a California teen and son of a Mexican migrant, Abel suffered from anxiety and depression, and eventually saw a therapist who convinced him that he was transgender. He had anxiety and depression, and the therapist should have helped him, but instead convinced him that he was transgender. And with the therapist's recommendation, he obtained female hormones and breast implants by 19. He did not utilize the approval from the therapist for other surgeries. He's going to talk about his story. Within 3 years, he realized that presenting as a female did not make him happy and stopped using cross-sex hormones due to medical issues. Insurance finally agreed to cover the removal of implants. Thank goodness for very small favors. And many back and forth arguments. Now at 27, he has a multitude of symptoms caused by damages done by gender-affirming care. Laura Becker, who was on my program once, Laura is a detransitioner advocate, speaker, and author of the upcoming memoir, Quirky Not Queer, Surviving the Trans Cult. Quirky, like tomboy. These are words that were complimentary once. Laura had a history of childhood trauma, autism, and suicide ideation when she was approved for transition at age 19. She injected testosterone for 7 months and had her breast removed at 20, only to detransition at 22. And then your host for this panel is Jeanette Cooper, who is a mom and co-founder of Partners for Ethical Care, partnersforethicalcare.com. I think I said that 10 times on the air today, a nonprofit organization focused on raising awareness and supporting efforts to abolish the affirmation model of gender identity. She's spoken at school board meetings, testified across the country in support of bills to protect children from, quote, gender medicine. As part of her volunteer work with Partners for Ethical Care, she gets to work with attorneys and detransitioners through a project called Transition Justice. I hope everybody sues the ever-loving hell out of the people who allowed this to happen. Jeanette also connects people harmed by gender medicine with attorneys and may be able to provide legal assistance. She's my hero. Most of her time, however, is spent with the nearly 4,000 parents through a Facebook group of Partners for Ethical Care, partners of transgender and non-binary kids, teens, and young adults. She's going to moderate our panel tonight. I'm very, very grateful and honored to be here. Thank you very much, Jeanette, and I'm going to turn the mic over to you.
Okay, thank you everybody for being here. This is a little bit of a different type of program than what has been done in the past, and I think we had a live stream event on Twitter the other night, or X, talking about how this is a different type of panel. So I will start out with a couple of things. One, a thank you to the sponsors who gave us money. We're an all-volunteer nonprofit organization. We have no paid staff. We do everything on top of our regular jobs, and anything that we have in the first couple of years, including our website, was donated by us personally, and now we actually have money to pay for very small things like program books. So I want to thank our sponsors for giving us some money to be able to fly in or pay for gas and some honorariums for each of our guests. They really deserve that. So one of our sponsors, Moms for Liberty, I want to say thank you. I don't think they're going to stop me from saying Scarlett Johnson is a badass. She's amazing. Really a woman who knows her stuff. So I really like women like that who really know what they're talking about. We've sat on panel discussions together, and I'm in great admiration of what she's doing. The second is the Wellness Way. So please say thank you to the Wellness Way. Unless I'm wrong, they are headquartered here in Wisconsin. Yeah, in Green Bay. So a couple things. I really want you to talk to both of them. Erin is going to be at the Wellness Way table. They're a health and wellness group, and they have clinics kind of across the country. So I didn't know anything about them. You will probably know way more than I do by the end of tonight, and I really want you to think about what they're doing to help people who have been harmed by gender medicine. They've already started doing that, and that is a massive need in our country. And then the last, I really want to thank Parents on Patrol, Allie Schweitzer, who is not here tonight, but please, I want you to clap for her. I called her, I asked her, I said, I want to do a series of detransitioner panels. We have some seed money to just pay for the venue, but basically nothing else. So I need a venue that is secure. I need a venue that we can trust. I need great people. So of course, this is the Midwest. That's not hard to find great people, especially in Wisconsin. So we came to the Ingleside. She planned everything. I hadn't been in this venue since I had been here kind of a year or so ago with Chloe on a panel discussion. So I'm very thankful to her parent advocacy organization and her organizing herself, doing everything so that I could walk in and everything would be set. So I very much want to thank Parents on Patrol, our third sponsor for this. We also have other sponsors for our future events. This is the first in a series. This one is our first here in Pewaukee, Wisconsin. The second one is in your program and is announced tonight on June 5th in Bolingbrook, Illinois at Bolingbrook Golf Club. We are gathering more panelists for that. There are two that I can announce right now who will be coming to Chicago. Our moderator for our female-only panel, we will have a female-only panel and a male-only panel. Our female-only panel will be moderated by Pamela Garfield-Yeager, who's a therapist who's doing a lot of work in this area and has testified alongside me and others in states to pass legislation. The second person that we're bringing in, tickets booked, contract signed, would be Richie Heron, is coming in from the UK. So I'm really excited about that because one of our goals in these panel discussions, and there are a multitude of goals, but the first goal has already been reached, which is our goal is to bring, quote unquote, detransitioners together, because when that happens, amazing things grow from that. So even if you all weren't here, but thank you for coming, even if you all were not here, we would still have achieved our primary goal, which is the synergy that happens when we bring these young people together. So we're very happy about that, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to bring Richie over to create that synergy there in Chicago. And then we have an event after that on June 18th, confirmed, in Santa Fe, New Mexico at La Fonda on the Plaza, which should be a lovely venue. Again, I have local organizers who do all of this work, so I can just show up and look pretty. Everybody's supposed to laugh at that. So, again, a couple of announcements. Their stories are off limits for you to ask questions about and for me to ask questions about. There are a multitude of ways that we can talk about the past for the panelists that are up here, and you can look that up online. That's partly why we did the documentary at the beginning, so that you could see examples of stories. Every story, of course, is unique, but that's one thing that is simply an off-limits topic. I am not going to ask somebody to talk about the greatest trauma of their life right here. They have already done that. They have done that work. The reason that they are up here is not because they have been harmed by gender medicine and gender ideology. They're sitting up here because of their growth. Not everybody has the qualifications to sit on a panel. These particular individuals have demonstrated growth in a way that deserves a spotlight on them. But I will say tonight, I'm asking them questions that they've likely never been asked. So you have to have a little bit of patience as an audience. I'm asking them things that are in the future, things that are both in the present, what they would like to see in the future. These are not easy questions, even if I asked you in the audience some of these questions. So there might be a significant number of pauses. And so I ask you to be patient. We have gone over a few of the questions. I have let them know, except for Luka, who didn't get that privilege. And I actually don't think Laura did either. Sorry. So there are a few questions that we did have on the Twitter space we talked a little bit about, but I'll try to guide them through some of them as much as possible, but please be patient. This is an intimate audience, which I appreciate. There are note cards and pens there. So if you want one to write down a question as we're sitting here, all you have to do is kind of raise your hand, and then this lovely mom, Tammy, will just bring you a pen and a note card, and you can just scratch away, and then it will be handed to me, who will try to read your handwriting, so please be gentle. I think that's about it. I kind of want to get started, and yes, I did give you pens. I think you all are drawing things. That's lovely. Okay. So I'm going to ask you a softball question right now, and you got to keep it short because I have, I think, 57 questions or something. So why don't you take us from the last documentary or testimony, 3-minute testimony that I watched you give, and can you give us just a short update from greatest trauma of your life to where we are today in a couple of sentences?
I can't even remember the last testimony I gave in front of you because I know you read my testimony several times because I couldn't make it places. But I got back into school. I passed my EMT certification course and I am moving. So
I think the last time I saw you was just like a month or two ago. And I mean, even then, I mean, it's been probably the busiest 2 months of my life, basically going 3 to 4 weeks without like really ever seeing my family and then coming home for maybe a day or so and then just not being able to stay for long enough to really adjust to just the normalcy of being home and not just like going all over the place. But I mean, I've been having more time at home lately, which has been refreshing, especially after such a busy period of time, busy year. And it's been nice just being able to spend some time with my family, being able to spend some time at home. And my schedule's been freeing up a little bit, which has been, it's refreshing, and I'm very happy about that. It feels like I've finally been able to find that balance between work and home life and family, which is something that I didn't realize for the longest time that I was struggling with, actually.
I would say the last time we met up was April last year. Yeah, so it's been a while. It's good to see you again. I will say that. But I've been mostly just busy working and my personal life. Got some good news in my personal life, but I'll just keep that private.
Come on, Abel.
Fine, just because y'all are asking nicely. I have a girlfriend. After being single for 27 years.
There you go. I think the last time I saw you was in January in DC. Since then, I've figured out where I want to move. I'm escaping the Midwest finally after 27 years. I'm moving to Phoenix, Arizona, get some sun, be on the forefront of kind of all that's going on with the movement, just, fighting gender and woke ideology. And my biggest project I'm working on now is editing and writing my memoir about the detransition, healing, and kind of a rallying cry for this generation of Gen Z. How do they exist? How do they move forward? The title has been updated since whenever I wrote that in the program like a month ago, because it's a living document. So the new title for now is Surviving the Trans Myth, a detransition memoir. So about 80,000 words into that right now.
Okay, so my next question is, what is on your resume? If this doesn't have to be a real resume, what is on your resume that wasn't there maybe a couple of years ago? This could be, it could be a skill. I'll give you an example. Partners for Ethical Care needed a website. We had no money, so we had to learn how to build a website. I now know how to do a website in Wix. Please don't ask me to do that. I'm not for hire or anything like that. But our first website, the website that you see today, was actually built completely by volunteers who never knew how to build a website before that. So that's on my resume now. But there might be other things that you just didn't have that skill set before. Can you talk a little bit about what is new on your resume?
The past 3 years have been my just explosion of healing, and creativity is part of that. So the skills I'm most proud that I've developed in the last few years are, graphic design. I have my own store, I make apparel, I design. Public speaking. I used to be extremely shy, would never raise my hand in class. I feel like now I have just confidence and ease of speaking at a microphone. And I would say boundaries are really a skill that I'm very happy to have. Just being able to discern between a healthy relationship and an unhealthy relationship. It's been a major skill. And I don't know if I can sell that to any employer, but I think it's going to help me for the rest of my life. So I'm very proud of that.
I would say for me, some of the skills I've developed the last few years is mostly speaking with a lot of more people. I was much more shy way before I did this. Then I've also improved on technical side with computers, cameras, etc., and a lot of healing as well.
So it's very similar for me actually. I'd say like a good, I don't know, like 75% of my social skills I developed probably within the past 2 to 3 years. Like when I was going into this, and I say this a lot, I'm not exaggerating when I say I was basically a shut-in. I was 16, 17 maybe, absolutely ruined by quarantine and the ongoings in my life. And I spent a lot of my time just like in my room, illustrating, writing, playing video games, not really doing much, not really ever spending time with people my age or basically going out ever. So it was a huge jump going into this very social arena, basically. And I've just been developing pretty much like all my social and speaking skills just on the go. And it's incredible because like it's basically like second nature now. I feel like a fully formed human being. But almost. But yeah, that's probably been the biggest change, the biggest improvement in my life in the past few years.
I'm gonna go with the rather obvious one of public speaking. In high school, I was the kid that had to stay after to give the presentation just to the teacher because I would almost pass out, like not exaggerating, I would almost fall over. And now I can talk in front of people. Not quite sure how that developed, but I can do it now. And more than that, I can also, that's kind of branched out into my other aspects of my life where when I work with kids, I've learned to like embrace the weird and just be fun and confident in front of them and in myself. And that is something that I think if like 13-year-old me saw that, she would be simultaneously kind of horrified, but probably impressed.
You don't have to have the next question. You don't actually have to go in that order. And you don't have to answer every question, although you'll get more points if you do. Because I'm keeping score. That's not true. Okay. The next, and these have been crowdsourced questions from the Sisters at Partners for Ethical Care. We're all female. We're all also mothers. I already said we were volunteers and we need money. I've said that many times, but if you flip over your program, there's a nice little QR code that can take you to the donation page, or you can put money literally in my jar. Can I say it again? So my next question came from one of our volunteers. How has your experience resulted in new passions, even if they're hobbies, new things that you are now super kind of into that you never knew that you could get into or would get into? New passions.
I'm a artist, so all I have is passions, old passions and new passions. So unfortunately, I always have more passions that I get into. But I think I guess one passion that I didn't expect was my biological drive to have children kicked in, which is a pain in the ass, to say the least. Especially dating at this time, or putting myself out there, which I try not to do. But I think I never thought I would be such a mama bear, but I have friends that are even just a couple years younger than me, and they're like, "You're really a mama bear. Like you are, like just you know, you have such a protective drive to help younger people, and like I think just working with kids, working with my younger detransition peers and other survivors that are healing. I guess I never I always knew I would be with like my animals, my rats and my cats, which I have plenty of them. but it didn't ever translate to humans. So I guess I've become more okay with human beings, which is pretty cool. Not all human beings though. I still have discernment. But yeah, my like my mothering qualities, my nurturing qualities, and then roping a little bit of PTSD into that to have like good mama bear skills.
Well, some of the hobbies I've been getting into, especially last year, is just drawings. And if you look at your pamphlets, y'all will get to see some of my drawings. I will add a little as what Laura just said, but the male version of whatever Mama Bear is. I've been very protective of and trying to be very helpful as well for everyone who's been going through this. And later in the night, some of the panelists may be able to verify that with my girlfriend, as we've only been for about a week, but she feels very safe with me.
So for me, it is very similar. I mean, I've realized in the past few years that just how much family means to me, and that I want to have a family of my own one day, and fighting for a better world for the next few generations has been a big part of that for me. I know that once this is said and done, I eventually want to settle down, get married, become a wife, and become a mother one day. And if I'm able to have children of my own, then I'll do that. If I have to resort to adopting, then I think that's just as beautiful. But I've also, I mean, from a young age, I had these fantasies of just going out into the world and exploring and traveling and going out on all these different adventures, all these different people. And I mean, I've literally just been thrust into a life where I'm doing exactly that. And I mean, I think I want to, if by the end of this I haven't traveled the entire US, I want to finish up my expedition and then go on to the rest of the world.
In terms of like new interest, I would say I have more so rediscovered things that I kind of lost when I got caught up with the whole gender thing. Because before that I was very athletic. I had all these interests that kind of got shoved to the side when I began to heavily focus on that. And so I've been picking back up some of those. I've been, getting into the music that I liked at the time. I've been getting back into being a little bit more athletic and trying out some sports. Getting back into, I did trap shooting before I had to stop it when I changed schools due to transitioning. So just getting back into that with less teenage angst now, hopefully. And also just really getting into like my health and working on that as well.
She keeps wanting to pass me 2 mics. That's a terrible idea. The one is more than enough. Can you tell me about your love-hate relationship with social media? Or not. We're live right now on YouTube and a few other social media places. So I don't think we're going to get cut off if you answer this question. But it is a question that I think is pertinent to your particular kind of age range group. There are things that I think everybody gets from the social sphere, whether it's in person or online. And with that, it's difficult to kind of filter through some things. So I personally will go to social media to get some positive remarks. Unfortunately, everything comes, and as you're scrolling through, you can't help but have negative comments somehow equal 10 times a positive comment. I don't know how that happens, the math that happens there, but it does seem to happen. But eliminating all of that, which some parents will eliminate social media for their children, sometimes they miss some critical positive reinforcement that's there. So tell me a little bit about social media, what you do with it, how you feel about it.
I will start off and say I am on it because I have to be since I started talking about this. I think it is a useful tool in small doses. And it's just very easy to have it become a very negative like time waster when you could be doing something else and you're just sitting there like scrolling on Twitter. And I just think it is a very divisive place, even in the best of times. But it's useful for some things.
I mean, it really is. We really do have these massive information highways in our pockets at the touch of our fingertips, and it's a lot to deal with. You know, I'm young, I'm on the spectrum, and it's just having that much information being given to me in high doses on a daily basis is difficult. And I imagine it's the same for pretty much anybody who's using it. But really, as much as I'd like to get away from it, in order to basically be in the loop on anything now that's going on, because the world is moving so fast, you're basically required to use this thing. And you know, sometimes I try to have breaks, but then it feels like I'm missing out on so much. That being said, I also think that it is a useful tool for networking, for connecting with other people, making new friends, new connections, maintaining old ones with friends and families. I personally use it, I mean, not only to spread my own message, but also for artistic purposes, for getting inspiration for illustration, for fashion, for discovering like new music and connecting with other people based on those hobbies. But it is also difficult because it also a lot of those same communities and those same reasons that got me looped into what happened to me in the first place.
I will say social media is a love-hate relationship. Yes, I know. Wait, wait. I know. Well, now I get to add a joke. I will say, as one of the older panelists, like me and Laura, we were on the internet way before the youngsters here. So I could say from personal experience, I've seen the internet develop, and I'm a little worried for the younger generation of how this goes. I will say I love the internet for the ability it gives me to communicate with other people about the harm that's been done to me, but I hate it because there's a lot of negativity, unfortunately.
So, you know, I'm a person that's been very socially isolated and had a fractured relationship with family and very few in real life connections. So for me, connecting with people online has been my only socialization. And so that, you know, can have negative effects, but I think overall it's been very positive for me. I have been able to find other people like me that I just wasn't able to connect with going to school or in college or in my family of origin. So it's been very healing to find mentors. Like I found one of my best friends who's the editor of my book on Twitter. I mean, I wouldn't be moving to Phoenix. I wouldn't have the confidence to network if I hadn't honed those social skills online and met people. And I think because I'm a writer, I just think and then I write the thoughts. And I think when you're writing a lot in a vulnerable way, people feel like they know you. And so it can breed genuine relationships that translate into the real world. I mean, I think you get out of it what you put into it. I put a lot of effort into writing, make digital art and music. So overall, I think it's been a net positive, but I've been thinking about this lately that I think the social media, it encourages a culture of unaccountability. And I think that's a culture-wide issue that we're having with millennial and Gen Z generations, that there's no accountability because you don't have to see someone's face. You don't have to feel their pain or love. I think it makes it more difficult to connect with people, and it encourages weakness. And I think my generation is very weak because they don't know how to mirror other people's emotions They don't know how to have impulse control, and they don't know how to have boundaries. So, and those are very important to being able to have a stable sense of self and function in the world. And I do think social media and the internet is real. I do think it is part of the real world. It's not fake, but it's just a lower quality, a lower resolution reflection of reality. And if I'm very concerned for younger people that haven't found older mentors. Part of the reason I've been able to heal and integrate how digital I am with tangible reality is finding older mentors who existed before the digital age. So like Gen X, for example, I'm very grateful to my Gen X mentors because they can say like, this was normal. Actually, this is new, or this is how it's always been. This is existential. And I think we really need to have a good balance of analog media and analog interactions if we're going to use this tool fruitfully.
So you said something interesting. You all there at the end called yourself old or the older ones, and I'm wondering what I am. If you all are the older ones or old ones.
You don't want to know.
I love that though. Just a show of hands from the panelists, if you met all of each other only online before you met in person. Is that correct? You only met each other online before you met in person. Did anybody meet in person before you ever knew each other online? No, right? You all met online, which follows my direction to parents, which is please tell your children, do not meet strangers off the internet. Please tell yourself, go meet strangers on the that you know on the internet. That's how we meet each other. But your critical step that you're talking about, Laura, yes, meet them in person. Yeah, you can first connect with somebody online, but then the next step is to meet them in person, which is why we have a physical event right now where you all human beings are sitting right in front of us and we can all see you. And after this, we can chat. And we were chatting earlier. That human to human connection is so necessary. And I think social media might be the first kind of seed that is there, but the human to human interaction, I think, is the love that comes out of social media. The next question is similar in this way. Many of you found communities when you were transitioning, and that was part of the draw. That was the kind of the vulnerability, the thing that you were missing. And now, what kinds of communities do you have now since you have detransitioned, and how do those feel different?
So I didn't really have a community when I was transitioning. I was very isolated. And I think that's part of what helped me to get out of it faster because I didn't have any other bias persuading me. The people that I was hanging out with were middle-aged drug addicts from Grindr that I was friends with benefits, and there wasn't really friendship or benefits. There was just drug use and a lot of depression. So compared to that, which I wouldn't call a community, I feel like now I have a couple different groups. Like I have the detrannies that are my BFFs, my peers. And it's really good to have like same age peers because, again, like the middle-aged drug addicts are, we had the same music taste. That's why we always connected because I like old music. But so I have them, which is amazing. I'm so grateful to find people my same age. It sounds like you take that for granted, but my whole life being on the spectrum, I didn't really connect with my peers. So to find a bunch of other weirdos like these people, I'm very grateful. And then I have, again, like the mom friends, the Gen X mom friends. And I love them too because they know, they have wisdom. And I'm like a surrogate daughter to them because I will listen to their advice, and all they want in the world is for their kids to listen to their advice, and all the kids will do is not listen to it. So I will hungrily listen to their advice, and they've been around, and they have wisdom of how things were before, and for both of those groups, I'm extremely grateful.
As you pass the mic to Abel, I just want to note that before I was an old person. Now I'm wise in the same moment. I never changed ages. I'm Gen X. This is fantastic. And I'll pass you an extra 50 after this.
All right. So for me, community-wise, before I transitioned, I was a very lonely kid. Didn't really have much connection with anyone. The connection I had with the trans community was a human connection I never had before. But as I was kicked out of the community, I learned that it was a conditional human connection. But in the time that I've been away from that, I've been able to build a more personal connection with a lot of people, like Laura, a lot of the parents who are fighting in this fight. And I've joked many times I've been adopted at least 1,000 times. I'm glad no one's asking for Christmas or Mother's Day gift because I'd be poor. I'm just saying. I'm already poor. I don't need to be even more poor. But some of the other connections I've made is a lot of good friends out in Texas. A lot of them are comedians, so I'm trying to get a little funny. So,
You're a little funny.
well, I'll take that. I'm working on it. But I would say the best connection I've had these last few years, I'm going to be biased. It's been my girlfriend. I'm just saying that.
So, of course, after detransitioning, I've lost my ties with the transgender community for the most part. But I discovered that there was a community of people just like me, full of other men and women, adults, and adolescents. And I mean, these are some of the most valuable friendships, the most valuable connections I've had in my life. They're part of the reason why I keep going, why I keep doing what I'm doing. And I've also made close friends with other people who are not detransitioned all across the country, people who are often in other movements, who are activists in other avenues, people who I cherish dearly. And I also converted to Christianity as I started going through my activism journey. So I don't currently attend church in my town, but I have gone to and spoken at many churches across the country, and I have close ties with people who I've met through those communities, and I'm very thankful.
So before everything, I had like the communities of the sports teams I was on, the ballet classes I did like 3 times a week. All of these things. The all-girls school I was at was one big close-knit community. And those slowly dropped off as I began to socially transition and then switch to a different school. I knew less people. All that kind of stuff, and slowly lost those. And then as I've come back out of it, I've been able to build connections with people that feel authentic for the first time in a very long time. Because, and I didn't realize it, of course, until looking back, but I really didn't have that, authentic human connection when you're trying to be someone completely different. And luckily for that, so some of my friends that knew me when I was transitioned, we still talk now. They're chill about everything. We hang out whenever I'm back home. I've gotten to meet all of the lovely detransitioners and parents throughout my time traveling around, and it's been good.
I think what you're alluding to is a couple of things. People who live based upon values, or at least try really hard. People who reflect upon their values and then try to act in a manner that displays those values. I think I was just chatting with, where are you? I was just chatting with you earlier, and we were talking about people who are apathetic, who kind of are like, yeah, whatever, it doesn't matter. Like, I can't really bear to be around those people for very long. I would rather have a person who adamantly disagrees with me, who is super passionate and it has values of some sort, even though I don't share them. And I would rather be around people like that who have really reflected upon what they think is important and are attempting to live in a manner that reflects those values. So I do see that. Laura and Luka talked a little bit about parents. So I run a massive parent group called Concerned Parents of transgender / non-binary kids, teens, and young adults. And there are some really crazy parents in there. I'm one of them. And we really have such a variety of people in that group. And what I notice is they have quirky, cool kids because they're like quirky, cool parents. And that's really kind of a gift, I think, to be able to interact with so many different people. How many parents do we have in this room right now? Can you raise your hands? That's a lot. Very prolific group here. So what is your advice? I'm going to ask you a series of questions because I already know that you get asked this a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and get it on the live stream now. And you could probably go on and on with advice. But what is your advice to parents who have a child that is still lost in the gender forest?
I think it's about balance, which is, of course, hard to strike. You have to be persistent with your children and not ever concede any ground to this, even in affirming pronouns or preferred names or preferred anything, really. Because then you're conceding ground that, yes, they are in fact born in the wrong body. But you also have to make sure that you're not spending all of your time together just focusing on this one issue.
I will have to agree with Chloe on that one. That balance is good. Obviously, don't spend all your time with your children fighting regarding this new gender identity, because as we all know how kids are, very rebellious, and will find any way to hate you, especially if they're being trained by other adults that aren't good in their lives. So, I would say the best way is work with your child. I can't really say there's a clear-cut way how to do this properly, but it's unfortunately a lot of trial and error that you have to learn. But if you're able to, in the end, your kid will appreciate you.
First of all, Jeanette, you said you were going to ask questions we've never been asked before. I've heard this one once or twice. That said, I think we can all agree that there's a culture right now, as I was speaking before, of unaccountability. It's a nihilistic culture that promotes destruction, neuroticism, lack of community, lack of values, or really valuing kind of the transitory, ephemeral, emotional states more than, traditional values of, let's say, hard work. And that sounds so scary when I said it out loud, at least to me. I'm a lazy artist. But honestly, I think that things always tend to swing back and forth between permissiveness, freedom, libertinism, let's say, and then, more conservative, fundamental, I guess, Christian type values. And I think right now our culture has swung in the very leftist direction of permissiveness and wanting to be your child's friend and making sure that they're never upset and making sure that, I think it's counterintuitive. And I think that we need to let kids experience pain. And I think we all need to experience pain. And detaching from it, there's a lot of different escapist mechanisms that we can use to detach from pain. Some of them are good in the short term. Some of them are really, really harmful in the long term. And I think that when you're too permissive as a parent and allowing your child to rule over you, it's not, I don't think it's evolutionarily correct. The bigger, stronger person tends to be the more dominant party, the smarter, more experienced person, right? And I think that there's a culture right now of looking to children for wisdom what the hell is that? Right? That's just, again, maybe a groomer would say that. Right? That's a good thing for them. But basically, I think parents should research the authoritative parenting model, which is it's not permissive and it's not authoritarian. It's authoritative, which means that it's having a good balance of structure, guidance, discipline, as well as allowing your child to make choices and having discussion with them about those choices. If you're modeling proper values and proper behavior, that's all you can really do. At the same time, you also have the pocketbook. No one has a pocketbook anymore. But you have you have well, I don't know if you guys have Bitcoin yet, but you have the money, right, to control their funds, their spending money, their phone service, all of that. And I do think it's perfectly within your rights to provide the values that you think are actually conducive to raising a person into mature adulthood, not just taking care of whatever whim that they have. And that's a common theme that I've seen with parents of trans-identified kids. It's not exactly their fault individually, it's just the culture that is like this right now. But I think there's a movement in this kind of area to start implementing more boundaries.
Thank you, Laura. Luka's still going to answer the question so that I get 2 mics after this.
I am, and it's time for everyone's favorite segment, which is child rearing advice from a childless 22-year-old. But the biggest thing you can do when a kid is struggling with their identity like this is be firm, but do it with love. These kids are experiencing real struggles, real pain, and most of all, they want to know that someone sees that. And it doesn't have to be seeing that in the sense of, I'm going to affirm your name or your pronouns, or I'm going to call you this different thing or pretend that you're something you're not. It doesn't have to be that. They just want to know that someone sees that they're struggling and that someone cares for them, and oftentimes cares for them enough to put the boundaries in place that they are craving. Because when a young person is going through a crisis, the thing to do is not to take the boundaries away and leave them lost and confused and searching for that, because they will search. And if they won't find the boundaries from you, they will find them somewhere else. But they are searching for that. And the other thing is, your kids, young adults, they're also going to want to build their identity. And even if they've latched onto something like this, the best thing you can do is still feed into that you are an amazing person just as you are. Celebrate if they want to try new weird fashion things or they have new hobbies. Feed into that. Show them you care. Show them that you want to do these things with them. You want to take them shopping to get weird shirts and pants, or take them to get a fun haircut. Show them that you are interested in their lives. And most of all, affirm them that they are perfect the way they are, and they can do all of these things without having to label themselves as something else. Because that's what it means to let kids be kids. Kids are weird, they're wild, they're crazy, they're chaotic, and they're always going to be. And it's unfortunate we live in a time where that has kind of been twisted into the need to label themselves as something. And the best thing you can do is be firm, approach it with love, and just let your kid know that they are wonderful as they are, and there is nothing wrong with them.
I can't say that any better. They're so good at segueing into the next question. I feel like I should pass each of them $50 extra. So I have this book called Freedom of Mind by Stephen Hassan, who writes about cults. And the book Freedom of Mind talks a little bit about what you were talking about, which is there's this pre-cult self, which is vulnerable. There's some things that the person is seeking, and they find those things in a cult. And the second kind of person is the cult identity. This person got those kind of holes filled, maybe it's the community that they were seeking, maybe it was some identity that they couldn't quite get all the things that they wanted. But when they join a cult, they get a new name, they get a new identity, they get a whole new set of things that they're then allowed to do because they're kind of reborn. And then the thing that we're really searching for is that authentic self, that integration of, yes, the vulnerable person plus the new skills, but none of the bad stuff, which is isolation, from family and friends. So one of the things that he talks about actually in that book is to complement the positive changes. My own daughter, you talked about boundaries too. My own daughter wasn't a super confident girl when she kind of fell into the trans ideology. And then she became kind of president of the GSA. And that's really awesome because she's the head of an organization. That's cool. And she gained all kinds of other things. She joined both the boys and girls volleyball teams. That's cool. That's pretty awesome. She was pretty scared to play sports before. I made her do it. Basically, like, you're going to finish out the season, and she kept doing it. And then after she kind of moved in with her dad, she continued and actually joined 2 teams. So there's something great about that. Related to the boundaries thing, I see that my own daughter, of course, is in this kind of boundaryless environment, and now she'll be joining the Air Force Academy, which is wonderful. Clearly displays her leadership qualities, her physical activities that she gained through this kind of identity, but has significant boundaries. So I think she is kind of seeking that, and there's something that I have as a point of pride because of that, even though she still considers herself trans-identified. So of course I congratulate her for all of those things. And that's the way that I can kind of keep connection. Again, it's so funny, Luka, I couldn't have planned it better. So parents say they want their kids to be happy. Since none of you are parents and all of you are kids, what do you think that parents actually should be aiming for? Laura already talked about this, but I'd like to hear from the rest of you.
I think if you want to build your child's identity, obviously it shouldn't be just through what they call themselves or who they say they are, the way that they dress or present themselves, but rather through what they do, what role they play in their families, in their communities, their hobbies, their skills, the things that they have to offer to the world and the people around them. Which I think things like school clubs and things like band and especially sports are especially important for developing that.
I'm going to just reiterate the question because I think you could actually say more on this, which is the goal, the end result of raising a child. Some people say they just want their kids to be happy. What should they be aiming for, as well as what you talked about, which is actual, tangible kind of identity, well-rounded identity? How do they measure the result of their parenting in the embodiment of their child?
I mean,
Not that should happen, by the way, but many parents do it. They cannot help themselves.
I mean, we all want our children to be happy, but I think in parenting, the most important goal should be equipping your child with the skills necessary to navigate adulthood and live a life to the fullest extent. And that requires not only equipping them with those skills and having them have those experiences that will build those, but also keeping them grounded in the values that we have and developing that with them.
Before I answer your question, I got a question. I'm not a father, of course, but does being an uncle count?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, you're giving parenting advice not as a parent. It's absolutely a completely ridiculous question. So please answer it.
Okay, because I got like at least 10 nieces and nephews from my cousins. And it's like, well, I'm going to be honest, that's a low ball. That is a low ball of nieces and nephew when you're Mexican. At least 100 is the bare minimum. So I just got to tell the rest of the cousins, hurry up. But from the experience I have as an uncle, I've learned that there are some things I'm able to do, some things I can't, that's out of my control, with my nieces and nephews. And I understand sometimes it is a little tough for even their parents, my cousins. So what I've been able to learn from my role as an uncle and what I've seen from my aunts and uncles is, there are boundaries that these kids need, but they also need some good guidance.
I would say the way to really measure, I suppose, if we're using a measurement system, if your kid has grown up, because you want your kid to be happy. Everyone wants to see their kid happy. Lots of stuff that isn't good for us can make us happy, though. But I would say the mark of someone who's grown up well would be someone who is confident enough in themselves and sure enough in themselves to get back up when they are knocked down, because that's life, and that is what is gonna happen over and over and over again. And yeah, that kind of sucks to say out loud, but like, when you raise someone who is confident enough in themselves and is sure enough in themselves and is comfortable enough in themselves, that is going to be the person who has the grit to get back up no matter what is going on around them. And that is something kids today are missing just by virtue of the society we live in. The kids are going to be all right. They just need to build some resilience so when they get to adulthood, they can face it head on, knowing that they are sure of themselves.
I love listening to Luka talk for many reasons, but one of them was a line that she said, I think maybe first, maybe she had said it before. You can say it again right now. Go ahead.
Okay. Now my brain went blank.
So she talks about how she shouldn't be up there giving testimony at a state legislative hearing. Why not?
I don't like the fact that we live in a society where people are seeking life advice from a 22-year-old. I shouldn't be doing this. This should be working the other way around.
Which is the joy of putting on a panel like this, because I actually get to have quite young people giving life advice to people who are probably older than they are. So now I'm shifting. It's 7:30, and that's not the only reason I'm shifting. I'm shifting because this panel discussion and the future series, the rest of the series that will end this year, is somewhat of a graduation that we're looking at. What we're asking of our panelists is to give us a direction to head to, because they need to move on with their lives. That's what they deserve. And when Luka talked about, I shouldn't be up here, I shouldn't have to be doing this, I should be having a young adulthood that doesn't require me to educate you all who are 2 and 3 times my age about this issue, I deserve to be having a life. What I'm, it's true. So what I'm asking you now is, now that you are graduating from the term detransitioner that we don't all have a love-hate relationship with, because it seems it's a word that sticks us in time, and I don't want to do that to anybody. That's its own identity problem. So I'm asking you, who do you look up to now? Who should we aim our eyes toward as we look away from you on this topic specifically? Who do you think is doing good work against the gender industry? Is there another detransitioner whose work you admire? What do you see that resonates with you? Who should we be looking to as we look to you about things that are not related to this?
I mean, as I've detransitioned, I've started to look up to my older brothers and sisters and pretty much all the older members in my family, as I've reconnected with them as mentors, as well as all of the older adults who I've met across my activism journey. They've given me a foundation for how to model my own healthy relationships with family, with my future children and spouse, what I want for my own family. And what was the second part of the question again?
There were 15 questions in that one question. Who do you look up to? Who should we aim our eyes towards specifically on this issue as we kind of open the door and graduate you into life? Who should we be looking toward? Because this fight is not over. We have to continue until we abolish the gender industry and the affirmation model. In Partners for Ethical Care, just a little plug here again, Partners for Ethical Care wishes to dissolve. Our goal is to dissolve our organization after we do not have the affirmation model in our schools, in our hospitals, and everywhere else, and then we will close. We will take our resources and we will give them to other organizations who are doing good work to help detransitioners, to help lawsuits, to help all of those things. I want to close our nonprofit. That is our goal. So who am I going to look to continue the work against this industry?
Who are we going to look to? Like in what sense?
It could be somebody that you follow online. It could be somebody who is kind of in the place that you were at 2 years ago, a year ago, 5 years ago. Somebody who you see who is using possibly this process of activism, and they're in a point that you remember being at. Maybe they have a lot of fervor, and they're working in activism as a mechanism for processing. And then they will get to the point that you are at, which is, yeah, I've processed a lot through this. I've done a lot through this, and I've grown through this. And yeah, I'm ready to kind of take off from that topic anyway.
It's hard to point in any particular direction or towards any one particular person because, I mean, I know so many other detransitioners and desisters by now that, I mean, everybody is at a different point in their life, and everybody has a unique and yet equally important perspective in this movement and on this particular issue.
I'm gonna have to agree with Chloe on that one. I can't really name a specific individual that I would say to look up to, as we are all in different parts in our lives. So while the four of us here are doing well in our lives, there are many others who are not doing well and are still trying their own process at healing. But I would also say the people that I've been looking up to a lot recently are all the friends that I've been able to make through this process and this journey. There's been a lot of men in my life now that have been teaching me what I should have been taught as a young boy. A lot of the mothers that I've learned have also been teaching me. And now I will say one of the most recent people I've been looking up to. Well, height-wise, I've been looking down, but that's only because she's shorter than me. But my girlfriend, she's been a good foundation for me, so I will say that.
For me, my ideal, I guess, not in maybe 100% of ways, but my ideal mentor is always Dr. Jordan Peterson. He's my father figure. But beyond that, I also view him as a colleague, and I view him as an ideal for someone like me. We share certain personality traits of very high openness, so very high creativity, a passion, and then neuroticism. If you've ever seen his videos, he has emotions. But so for me, I look to him as a disciplined, neurotic, creative person who is searching for meaning, and he has the #1 philosophy podcast, even though he has so many guests on. It's categorized under philosophy. And for me, that's the person that I look up to, someone who is continuously interrogating life. And I saw him on his recent tour, which is called the We Who Wrestle with God tour. And it's such an aptly named tour in his upcoming book because it's Abraham. He's wrestling with God. And he's greatly helped me, not only in a psychological and therapeutic context from his wisdom in that arena, but in the philosophy, in the spiritual existential context. So I feel like people like that and it doesn't have to just be him, but anyone who embodies those qualities of passion, truth-telling, communication, articulating truth as closely to what we perceive as reality is possible. That's my aim as a writer and a speaker. That's my aim in every relationship that I have. And I'm sure it annoys my friends when I'm like, well, have you considered this and that? Like, you know, again, that mama bear kind of thing. But for me, he's the ideal archetype of person. And I also think he's integrated the masculine and the feminine qualities in terms of the emotiveness, the communicativeness, the expressiveness, the social skills, along with the masculine qualities of logic, order, and discipline. So he's highly informed my life as well as my book, my understanding of all of these issues from a philosophical lens.
Back to Luka, who was doing what I said earlier, which is thinking a little bit beforehand, taking a little bit of time. She's like, I'm not ready right now. Pass it.
Listen, I said my piece about like child development, and now my brain is nope. But in terms of who I personally have looked up to during this whole thing, my mom, which is, I know for some people, going to be a strange answer after everything that happened throughout my teenage years, you know, after the transition. But after detransitioning has brought us closer together. And it's one of those things where I can now, being a bit older and being, you know, in an environment I control a little bit more by virtue of having a car and an apartment and all those fun things, I can see kind of the struggles that she was going through at the time with both what I put her through as a teenager, and just broader with the issues going on in my family at the time, and being able to understand those and empathize with those and vent to each other about those has been something that has brought us closer, and it's made me realize just how much of a strong, wonderful woman she is, and how much I am so lucky she's my mom. And I guess to add on to something that was kind of phrased to in the original question about detransitioning not being an identity, detransitioning is a process. Swapping out one identity chip with another isn't helpful, and that's not how people grow. And so it's a process, and every process, like Jeanette said, eventually comes to an end. You know, I don't want to be in my late 20s, early 30s still talking about this, frankly. And that is why I think moving forward, we're at a point where I believe that we should be looking towards those in the medical field to be the adults in the room and take a stand against what is happening. On the social side, we have the lovely folks of like the gays and lesbians who are standing up and taking a stand against what's happening to children and defending their community. And it is time for the medical establishment to stand up, to listen to the whistleblowers that are coming out, and to kind of allow the establishment that caused this mess to start taking a role in fixing it.
This leads directly into my next question.
I cannot see
I
her
cannot
questions, by the
believe
way.
this. So could I have everybody who is under 30 in this room please raise your hand? Can you keep your hand raised if you have testified in a legislative hearing? Only if you are. So, panelists, please tell me about legislation that you want to see enacted and what it will take to make that happen, since you are actually experienced in this.
So this is very relevant right now, and to me and Abel, I'll let him speak on his own stuff, but there's statute of limitations issues. Like, everyone always says to us, you better sue the hell out of your doctors, and it's like, that's a nice slogan, but the reality is it's nearly impossible to do so for those of us who were harmed earlier. And so the biggest legislation that I want to see is the statute of limitations extended for medical damages. The healing process, you know, like with complex trauma and with just trauma in general, it took me so long to even realize that it wasn't my fault that I made this mistake, that I realized that it was a systemic issue. It took me years, even when I was still even when I started speaking out and saying, you know, this is not good that this is happening, you know, trans is an illusion, whatever else I was saying. I still didn't really internalize it up until pretty recently, that it really wasn't my fault as a victim. And so I know Abel is dealing with similar issues. We're both the same age. So it's very frustrating.
I'm just going to repeat the question for you, Abel. Legislation that you want to see enacted and what it will take to make that happen. And you can be very specific about that, given your experience actually talking to legislators, walking around. It's a pretty, can I have everybody in the room raise your hand, no matter what your age is, if you have testified in a state legislative hearing? Pretty good, kids. Pretty good. Nice.
Well, Laura took my answer, but it's again because we're both in the same boat. Unfortunately, Laura and I are on the much older side of this process, and unfortunately, what we are seeing today is long past for any help for me and Laura. So, at the bare minimum, I would like to see statute of limitation laws to be increased. But I will say for now, I've accepted the reality. But if there's any legislators here or anyone who works with the government, if y'all can help us out, please, that'd be great. That's honestly what I hope. But as of right now, as I've said privately to some people, while I am giving up right now for the lawsuit due to statute of limitations, I am working to heal my life in other routes.
So I helped to write and in several states implement bills for the Trans Bill of Rights. And so what it basically is that it guarantees insurance coverage for those of us who detransition and all of our medical needs, because as it is, it will basically implicate the creation of a standard of care, and also for codes to bill for those procedures, because as it is right now, that doesn't exist. There aren't really any studies even that acknowledge even the existence of or the unique issues that detransitioners face. And what detransitioners need is far beyond just the scope of legislation. We need the system itself to change, not only to prevent stories like ours from repeating over and over again as they are in the medical system right now, but also to address those of us who have already been hurt.
I had time to think, and now I have a list, so here we go. The obvious ones being protection for youth, so they're not even put through this process. Protections for vulnerable adults. You know, defining biological sex, which is a wacky one to have to say that we have to do in law now. But that, protecting women's spaces, protecting women's sports, making sure, you know, girls have the right to a single-sex space, defining those in law. Really just hammering out all the kooky, awful things that this has brought about. Protections for detransitioners when it comes to, like Chloe said, insurance, making sure we can get medical care. Because I will say, it is terrifying to have a doctor look at you and go, I don't know what to do with you. There's no protocol for this, after you just wheeled off about exactly all the health complications you're having. Like, that's not fun. But above all, I think it boils down to making sure that there are protections for the vulnerable in place, whether that be children, vulnerable adults, even parents who are trying their best and are having to fight against stuff like the sanctuary state laws for transition. I think fighting against that is something that we need to be doing as well.
This is a side question. Did any of you take a public speaking class in school? Any of you? No? Did you? I didn't. Okay. I was going to ask you what grade you got, and then I can ask the audience what grade they would assign, but I think I already know the question. You took one in college?
I took one in college and I dropped out.
Oh, that's sad. We're going to assign a grade to you. We're not going to assign a sex to you. Sorry about that. So this, again, leads to my next question. What medical and mental health supports are most important to implement for detransitioners right now? What can happen currently in the system that already exists without creating a new system? What can medical professionals in this room and people who are watching online? There was a woman who said she was a nurse and she used to work with the VA, and she really wanted to listen to this. And so she was here earlier. We talked a little bit. She had to leave and she's watching the live stream, and this is her question. What's important for detransitioners right now in terms of medical and mental health supports?
I think from the medical side of things, having some sort of system in place for medical supervision of doing stuff like getting off of hormones, because most of the advice I see around that is just from other detransitioners online and is not medically supervised by the doctors. Because that's how I figured out to not go cold turkey with going off of testosterone, was the advice of people who did. But that getting medical baselines for stuff that we know is impacted by cross-sex hormone use, stuff like, you know, bone density, joint health, vocal cord health, heart health, all these things that are just basic bodily systems that are impacted by this. You can get a baseline for what damage has been done within the medical system right now. Like that is something that they are more than capable of doing. Will they? That is the question, but they are more than capable of that. In terms of mental health support, I think that is extremely dependent on the person. I think having something there, because here's the thing, we don't necessarily need detrans specific therapists. We need therapists who are willing to work with detransitioners. We don't need someone who is specifically, you know, like hyper focused into this issue. We just need trauma-informed care. We need someone who is just willing to work through the mountain of problems that has built up over years of essentially rejecting your own body. And I think there's also a conversation to be had about the fact that for some detransitioners, healthcare is going to look a little bit different. Going back to a health system that hurt you is hard. And I know a lot of detransitioners aren't going to want to do that. They're not going to want to go back to a therapist after they spent so many years, you know, essentially with their lives revolving around that. They're not going to want to go back to a clinic that essentially feels like the scene of a crime to them, to their body. They're not going to want to do that. And I think finding alternatives for that is really important. So eventually these people do have somewhere to go where they can actually rebuild in an environment that is healthy and stable for them.
I will add to what Luka just said regarding the cold turkey comment. Yeah, I don't recommend going off hormones cold turkey. I did that. Now, because I did go on estrogen for a while. I'm not saying I know what women feel like going through menopause, but I think I felt a little bit. So, I know what I want to say. I have a slight idea. But yeah, going off cold turkey is not a good idea. But my main concern with all these medical professionals, mental health, is rebuilding the trust that we've lost with everyone. My opinion, we've been experimented on, and we've been we've been hurt, we're traumatized, and it's gonna be a little hard to build that trust.
And to build off that, I would say, not only do we need trauma-informed, therapists and physicians, but I think in general, just mentors in general, they don't have to be in a specific field of psychiatry or following the therapeutic model, but some of the most valuable people in my life were just mentors, just older adults that had good values, who cared, who would be honest with me, and who I could trust. And I think we need older men and women who have experienced quirkiness, let's say, have experienced these rapid different, because trans is not the only fad we've seen. There's the 60s free love movement, which I'm sure was totally healthy for everyone involved all the time and had no consequences. So, from the boomers to the Gen Xers to the millennials, just having older mentors who really take a personal interest in having a relationship, who can help teach detransitioners social skills that they might have lost, and to teach themselves to have confidence in their abilities and encouragement. And that might not be appropriate or available from a detransitioner's parents, or they might be so traumatized with the mental health industry that they're not at a place to seek therapy. I am a big believer in therapy myself, but I will say the therapists I've had have taken less traditional approach, and they've acted more as mentors, and those relationships have been invaluable.
This gets to the role of the people in this room and outside of this room who we call in our parent group supportive adults. People who can help somebody who's not a family member, but what can you do as a person who cares about people? What can you do for somebody? There's something that was suggested in the Partners for Ethical Care chat. One of our volunteers has worked in cosmetology for a long time, and that's kind of her skill set. And she said there was a detransitioner she's working with in Australia who really wanted hair removal. I mean, the young woman was really struggling with that, and she just felt like, I don't know anything. I just want this hair to go away. I don't even know what my options are. I've heard that this can be painful, uncomfortable. I don't even know what I'm doing. And they had a whole conversation, and this volunteer of ours said, well, I can go with you. I can physically go with you, of course, just like anybody else would go with you to do something. Of course I go with you. Is just a supportive adult, and that's a role that I can play. And there was a detransitioner who I was talking to who said, oh, I have a medical appointment, and I went to that medical appointment, and it was so uncomfortable. I'm not even sure I remember what the doctor said, because the nurse said something to me, and then I don't really remember anything after that. And I went all the way from one state to another state for this appointment, and now I feel like I'm not even sure what the point was. And I said, were you by yourself during this? Did you take anybody with you? He said, no, I didn't. I don't want anybody to have to do that. And I said, it's normal for anybody, not just you, to take another person for a consultation appointment like that. You're not a special person who needs somebody with you. Everybody needs somebody with them for an appointment that has so much information. And so many consequences, and you really need to know that information. So let's find somebody to go with you. And if you ask somebody and they say no, it's not a personal offense, they're just busy. So you ask the next person until you get to somebody who can go to an appointment with you. We had a detransitioner who had a doctor's appointment, and we really needed somebody to go with that person to the emergency room. Eventually we got somebody whose dad was actually an emergency room physician. He wasn't in that emergency room on that night, but that's why we went there, because that dad, who was an older gentleman, knew everybody in that emergency room. Guess what? That was a lot easier for that detransitioner to go there. So asking for somebody, any of the supportive adults who say, let me know if you need anything, That's really, I think, would be quite helpful. And I'm asking you, and I have a few more questions, and I'm going to go over. I'm just being honest with the audience right now. We're going to go over a little bit. What step in your detransition, you don't have to answer this, by the way, are you struggling with and really have some anxiety around and really actually need a supportive adult? Doesn't have to be a person in this room. Don't be awkward after this, people. That you really just need help getting over the hump, and maybe you know somebody in your life, but this is kind of a swift kick of, yeah, I should do that, and I know somebody who can go with me and help me with that.
I feel like I've been successful in the detransitioning process, but there was a lot of years that were lost in my development as an adolescent and a young adult relationally, and I'm still very much struggling with intimate relationships and still having discernment about who is healthy to be attached to, things like that. And I do feel like I have a good support network. I have a therapist and I have several mentors, but that's consistently an issue that I deal with is heartbreak and grief and loss and rejection. And I think sexual rejection as a detransitioner, it's difficult to bring it up. At least for me, it's more difficult to bring it up than any other topic because I can intellectualize any other topic, but this is so viscerally painful. So I always appreciate when older adults kind of listen to me. There's not that much they can do unless they're gonna like find me one of their sons to marry. I always say, they always could do that actually. But besides that, it's helpful just to have someone to listen who is married, who knows what it's like to have issues with that arena, even if they're not like physically, I don't know, going on a blind date with me like a chaperone. Yeah, just having an older adult to listen is helpful.
I'm just gonna add this for Laura. There are a lot of parents who can probably help you find someone, or you can go the route that I did, play matchmaker. I can probably direct you to the right matchmakers if you want. It's a little insane, I will say.
Back to the question, kids.
Hey, I'm answering the question.
What step in your detransition are you struggling with and could use help getting over the hump? Do you have those supportive people in place?
I will say that I don't think I really have much to like get over a hump. I've been doing a lot of healing these last few years. I've had a lot of good people in my life teaching me how to grow as a young man, and I think my recent relationship with a girlfriend will help me grow more as a person. So as of right now, I don't think I have anything to get over, but I'm very oblivious to a lot of things. So probably there is something. I'll let her figure that out later.
The joys of youth.
I mean, I feel like I'm really in the end stages of detransitioning, and I don't really have very many issues from it. Now I feel like that affect me as much in my day-to-day basis. But it was something that happened during my childhood. It was something that spanned almost the entirety of my teenage years. So it feels like basically that entire part of my life is missing. And looking back on those memories, they sometimes don't even feel like my own. It feels like somebody else's memories in my own brain, in my own body. So I mean, in the past 2 years, I've basically just been struggling to catch up socially, making my way back into a feminine role and adjusting to that. I feel like in a lot of ways, I'm still kind of emotionally immature. I get very attached to people, especially older people, as sort of like paternal, maternal figures, or like as like almost like older siblings. I feel like I almost have like this instinct of like being everybody's second little sister. But I haven't found that it's been super. I think it's something that I've been coping with in a pretty healthy manner, and it's just a part of the process for me.
I think one thing that initially I struggled with was just not learning, but trying to reintegrate into the world as a woman and finding role models that were the kind of women I wanted to be. Specifically, I am a very outdoorsy tomboy, someone who at 13, when everyone was asking, okay, when are you going to grow out of the tomboy phase, didn't want to. And finding adult women who still embody that and are confident in that is one of the things that I initially struggled with. And luckily, I'm at a point now where I have found those women, and they're lovely, and they're inspirations to me. On another note, speaking of rejecting, my female self, rejecting my very body, disassociating from myself so hard that all of my teenage years got wrapped up in that. And then I came crashing back in to reality at 20 years old. Seeking out like female specific care, and that's about as specific as I'm going to get with that, is something that after years of, going through high school, rejecting your body, being so disassociated from it, the idea of then having to like walk into a doctor's office specifically about some of those things is terrifying and uncomfortable, and working on it. But like, just as a thing, there are going to be women that are going to be coming back to this, and there are going to be aspects of it that are still going to seem scary and uncomfortable because you spent years in a different identity where you didn't get some of this information or get some of that reassurance around those things. And I know I'm not the only detrans woman that deals with like that as a concept. And so I think recognizing that and just being some kind of supportive adult, like Jeanette said, to be someone to be like, hey, this is okay. This is a normal thing all women go through, and it's gonna be all right, is a big thing.
So I have a few more questions, but if you happen to have a question, please raise your hand, and then somebody's going to bring you a pen and a note card, and you can write it down, and then they'll bring it up to me because I'm never letting go of this microphone. I want to know, you're all sitting here. This is the four of you. You're accused many, many times of, there's a bunch of things you're accused of, but one of them is that we fly you around the country, not we, Partners for Ethical Care, we, the whole kind of giant movement against the gender industry, and we just keep moving you around, and you're just the only people out there who are talking about this, who have detransitioned because you're the 0.00001 number of detransitioners out there. Can you tell me how many other people are there that we will likely never meet who have similar stories to yours? Not exact, but very similar, that you know in person or online. How many people are we exactly talking about?
I know I have interacted with quite a few other detransitioners online. And my advice to them is always, no, you stay private, you work through what you have to work through, you heal. Because as I found out via doing it, turns out posting your lowest moments on the internet maybe isn't a good idea. And then having like everyone associate you with those moments, also not a great idea. But there are so many people, and I know for the most part, at least almost any public detransitioner I've talked to has shared some similar sentiment of that putting yourself out there with a face to your story. Yeah, that's great for media. That's great for having a physical person in the room. It's not always great for healing. And for the vast majority of detransitioners, I would always encourage them to stay private and heal and rebuild their lives so they can be the best they can. And if that means them talking about their story later, more power to them. But I do not feel like they should feel obligated in any way to essentially become a target for a political battle while going through one of the oftentimes darkest times in their lives. We get talked about a lot. Well, why are you're not from this state? Why are you here? And there's really two answers for that. It's one, if there is someone from your state, chances are they didn't feel comfortable coming here to this environment to talk, if in terms of like testifying in front of a legislature. Or two, by the time you have someone from your state who is able to come testify, it is too late and someone has gotten hurt.
I'm just going to reiterate the question because people really do ask the specific question about how many people, for example, do you get messages from? I mean, you alluded to this, but you get messages from people in your DMs. I mean, you get messages. I get them from parents that I'll never meet, that we'll never hear from again, or that come up at events afterward and tell me their stories. And there are so many of them. So I really want to get a feel for people that we'll actually never see or talk to.
I mean, I couldn't count the number of messages that I've gotten from people who are questioning, who still identify as trans, but don't know how to proceed from here, people who have already decided to detransition, and also from family members of people from all of those groups. And of course, I've been across many communities all over the states. I've spoken in churches, in legislatures, at community events, and at every single one of them, I've met at least somebody who has either detransitioned, who is currently identifying as transgender, or a family member of theirs who knows them, who is currently struggling with that. It's everywhere across the states. It's everywhere in the West.
Can you give me the question one more time?
I can also give you the answer.
You know what? I'll cheat off the last two answers.
No, the real question is how many, for you sitting here, how many people are we who maybe call themselves detransitioners, or whatever their terminology is, who have stopped this process? How many of them have you interacted with, whether it's in person or online?
What was the grifter question again?
The what one?
The grifter question?
Oh, I'm not there yet.
Oh, I heard you talk about that one.
It's okay. Keep going.
Maybe I just have the memory of a goldfish. Regarding the transitioners, I have talked to many individuals who've thought about it, and relatives. So I will bring back to what Luka said. Please don't. This is not easy. It's best to heal on your own, away from all this. Yes, maybe the immediate attention is nice, but in reality, this is a long battle into hell itself. Unfortunately, I understand why the opposition say, well, it's the same 4 people, same 5 people, etc., etc. Well, it's because the 4 of us here right now are the only ones willing to put ourselves in the front lines to speak for who knows how many there are who wish to be private. And it sucks that we have to be one of the very few people who are willing to do this, but we're doing the hard work so others don't have to put themselves in harm's way.
I'm managing a anthology book of detransitioner into sister stories for Pitchstone, and so I've been in contact with dozens of detransitioners into sisters, and it's hard to even find people that are in a place to even write a story, even anonymously, even with me helping them to edit it, supporting them. There's so many. There's a couple dozen that I've gotten to actually do it, but it's been very difficult. Even though I'm in contact with so many, they're just not in a place where they're able to relive that, to write it down. I even had one person that wanted to do it, but he just wasn't in a place, and he sent me an audio recording of a therapy session that he did, and he just sent me that, and I'm like, okay, I will, like, I know you don't want to relive this. I will edit a story out of this, of what you said. And then he approved the edits, because that's how traumatizing it is, that they just can't relive it. But there are dozens of them.
Luka, do you want to re-answer that question or no?
I was going through my Twitter DMs to give you a number. And I think in the little part I scrolled through, there was maybe around like 8 to 10 of just little DMs saying, "Hey, I am also a detransitioner," connecting with that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I think about what Laura was saying, which is even to quantify, not that you can quantify a human experience like this, you would have to have somebody actually document. And that's one of the things that I talk about in terms of legislation is even if our legislation fails, what we're doing is making actual written documentation and history when we do that. And it's somewhat easier to do in a 3-minute time frame or 2-minute or 4 or whatever we're given, because it is super limited and you have to do it. It's also a timed assignment that you have to get done by a certain date, and it really matters. So that's one way that I think many parents and also detransitioners and others have gotten to the point of writing something down, because it's very much school-like that you have to do it within a certain frame, and that's helpful in a way because there's some sort of deadline, but it is absolutely incredibly difficult, I think, for anybody who has a personal experience, which kind of goes to one of the questions that I got from the audience, which is, we know that you have negative experiences, negative feedback that comes toward you from either the pro-trans crowd or people who are trying to intimidate or threaten you. How do you, what is your strategy for kind of dealing with that? What strategy, and you don't even have to talk about the strategy that you had before, what's working now for you to deal with stuff like that? Because it will always happen, whether it's this or something else. There's always kind of public critique of things that you're doing.
If it's online, for the most part, I ignore it. If someone has a problem with me, if they are not a person who's close enough to me to have my phone number and text me about said problem, that's not someone whose opinion I care about, frankly. If you're not someone in my life that is close enough for that, you are not someone who I'm going to put weight in your opinion of me.
I mean, most of the time, I just laugh it off because it's honestly really funny, some of the stuff that these people say. It's a lot of it just isn't based in reality, or it's just like, it's low-hanging fruit, people going after my appearance. And sometimes that does genuinely hurt. And sometimes the stuff that these people say is actually distressing. But I kind of have a strategy for pretty much anything in my life that makes me distressed or angry in the moments, where I'll sit back and I'll ask myself, is this going to affect my survival as an organism? And if the answer is no, I move on. It just doesn't matter.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question was, we know that you experience kind of negative feedback from all kinds of people. It could be kind of the pro-trans crowd or anything. How do you deal with things like threats, intimidation, kind of negative comments?
So I am lucky to say I don't really get much hate, much death threats. Now, I don't know if that's just because I'm one of the smaller fish in this pond out of the 4 of us, or I'm just a guy and these TRAs just don't want to mess with a guy. Who knows? But for the very few that I do, I just ignore it. Let it, if it treat like water running off my back. I don't really care for them. They're not. They don't deserve my attention. Now, where they will get my attention if they try to bring my family into it. So, luckily, I'm very private about my family. So, good luck on that one. But more recent, I will be very protective of my girlfriend if they try to get there. I'm in Texas. Try me.
So I, again, all of what they said, I do as well. But what I'll also do is, basically, I only care about reaching people who share my same values. I really don't care about the majority of people. And so what I'll do is I will use comments that I receive as educational tools. So I'll quote tweet something and I'll post it to my audience and I'll say, this is an example of this manipulation tactic. This is an example of this psychological issue. So I'll use it for educational purposes, basically to try to teach other people how to better not be manipulated emotionally or psychologically or affected by these types of comments. Because it's not just about gender, it's just general pathology, cluster B pathology most of the time, or just antisocial behavior. So I'll just try to say, this is someone being an asshole in this particular way. If you see this again, know that that's what it is and don't react in an X way. So, and also making fun of them.
Okay, so you've been so patient. I'm 15 minutes over. I'm going to keep going for a couple more minutes. So I want to know, because we have future panels coming up on June 5th in Chicago, and then we have one on June 18th in New Mexico. We have another one planned, and I really need people to help with that, which we can talk more about later. Because we really want a fourth panel on the East Coast, to be honest with you. And the way that these panels have happened is people who are here in this area have gotten a venue. They've organized the entire venue so that I can show up and magically things are here and people are here and all of that. So we really need somebody to kind of take the East Coast helm for our fourth panel. So I want to know specifically what people you would like to see on a future panel.
I mean, again, kind of what I was saying is there's so many really amazing people that I've met that are detransitioners, and I just want to do events with them so we can hang out again. But unfortunately, they're just not in a place to heal. So, I mean, to do this. So all of the people that I know who are just amazing, they're all smart, articulate, compassionate, good values, but they're all traumatized. I don't know. Are you open to desisters?
Yeah, I think we are. Yeah. I mean, this isn't for the people watching on the live stream, this is the time that I get to kind of crowdsource information, and then Partners for Ethical Care kind of takes that into what we're thinking about and the arguments for different people, and kind of put together a group, because we want a certain variety on our panels. Geographically also, I mean, it's expensive to take people places, to be real honest, and we don't have tons of funding. So really, like the ticket sales tonight, all of you who bought tickets, this is the way that we're actually funding this event. That's very real. So that's why we want an East Coast event, because we know we have some people that we would love to have at a panel, and that's one way, for instance, that we're bringing Richie Herron because it's basically a direct flight into Chicago O'Hare.
Mm.
That right there is actually cheaper than me going to Santa Fe.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You want me to just name drop people right now?
You can. Nobody's going to cancel you because you name drop a few people. This is a public
Okay.
brainstorming session right now.
Well, my good friend Maya, she goes by Maya Poet, which I helped her pick out that name. But she's an amazing young butch lesbian desister who lived as a man in Israel for like 5 years. And she has an extraordinary experience, and she, transitioned as a minor and can speak from the butch lesbian experience. So I think she'd be great. She's in Portland.
I will say, for what Laura said earlier, it's kind of hard to pick detransitioners who are in the right state of mind to go to testify and speak. So there's not really, unfortunately, many individuals who I can say I would feel comfortable picking. But if we can pick these sisters, I would say Emily Schmidt out in Texas. I like her. She's good.
I second Laura's suggestion of bringing Maya onto a panel because, I mean, she's incredibly smart. She's one of the smartest people who I've encountered within this movement, and she also has a very unique perspective, actually. of somebody who lived in an area where the sex roles are so strict that even by not having medically transitioned, she was able to pass and live the lifestyle of a man for a few years. And I can't really think of anybody off the top of my head, but we'll
If you think
continue
of somebody,
to.
yeah, please. I mean, this is a real honest thing that we really want to know and hear your suggestions.
You will be receiving my thesis on this in your text messages later.
You know what that means? That means Luka actually listens to my opinion because she has my phone number. You got that? Yeah, that makes me feel better. So my last couple of questions, I asked you that one. Okay. I'm going to ask one question and then I'm going to ask my final question. So I asked you this in the Twitter space, which is, what is a question that you would like to ask the other panelists? You weren't there, so you are stuck now. What is one question that you would like to ask the other panelists? I know that Chloe actually has a real question.
Would you guys be up for a WWE style detrans wrestling tournament?
I'm winning this. Fine, I'll be nice. I'll go easy on y'all. You don't believe me? Bitch.
Hand it over to Laura, please. This is why I get the big bucks for moderation.
First of all, I'm a limp-wristed artist. No. Second, yes, I will do the commentary for it. But
Oh,
beyond
yes.
that, I don't know. Males and women's sports, I don't know.
I mean, we'll have sex-based divisions, so it'll.
I'll go against myself.
We'll organize this as we.
Yes, and I would win.
The confidence is
down.
amazing.
No, we all know this.
Other questions from panelists? Oh, wait, Laura, I want to hear your question, actually, that you would ask other panelists.
My question is, what is a creative project that you are working on right now or very much want to work on in the near future?
I have two. So I did a self-portrait in high school titled Dysphoria. And I think at this point in my life, it's about time for a new self-portrait. So I am making an updated version of that once I unpack all my art supplies from my boxes. And then secondly, I am working on designing a tattoo that means a lot to me right now as well.
So, shameless self-promotion, but I'm currently working on a merch store with my own illustrations and designs. I actually have some stuff back there. It's just wristbands for now, but you can take as many as you want. But I also am an artist. I love doing illustration. You guys saw me scribbling in my notebook earlier. Not really taking notes, but I have a bad habit of never finishing my artwork, like always starting on sketches and sometimes coloring them a little bit, but I never really ever fully polish them. And I've done quite a few like vent pieces throughout the different stages of my detransition. And I think at some point I'm going to finish them and publish them.
I'm just gonna say I was drawing right now, but that's one thing that I've been working on. I've been doing a lot of drawings of just how I've been feeling over time. But just I will say, like Luke, I'm actually thinking I'm getting on tech too. I already have a few ideas, so when I get the money, I'll get them.
Okay, so we've reached kind of my last question. Although I do think that the question from the audience can kind of be integrated into this because it's both a personal question and a world macro question. So the question from the audience is what have you found is your favorite part or best part of kind of embracing your sex? And then integrated into that as much as you can kind of in your person. What do you see going on in the world that makes you quite hopeful?
About my sex or?
About you personally or about the world?
Okay.
Or both and.
I think the best part of accepting my sex is that it reduces entropy greatly. because I'm not living a lie, and I have like evolutionary goals that now I've been able to integrate. And it's like, okay, I have a very set developmental path, and not every person of my sex might feel that drive, but most people do. And I find that understanding the female archetype and from an evolutionary psychology perspective and my own personality, I realized was actually quite feminine. Like, okay, maybe in the past it was pet rats, but now it's graduated a little more, and I'm over the age of 25. Now I want to have children and do that, and the rats aren't cutting it anymore. So I got cats, and they're filling the void for now. I think, okay, what gives me hope personally is there are always creative avenues for any situation, whether it, any pain, any joy, any confusion, anything that you're thinking or feeling, you can always do something with that material. There's endless material for songs, poems, drawings, graphics, so many different things. That's what personally gives me hope, is I know that no matter what, even if I don't have all my goals that I want and I still have grief, I know no matter what, I'll always have the ability to take action via creative outlet. And that's what and in general, it gives me hope to surround myself with other people who do the same thing, even if it's the creativity of organizing a political event or, writing a speech. That still takes creative energy. So those are the people that I want to be around. Those are the people who I aspire to be like. And they're the people that give me hope to be able to manage my grief and the human condition for the rest of my life.
I have the memory of a goldfish, and she spoke a little too long. What was the question again? I'm sorry.
What gives you, number one, it was about what are you kind of, what is the best part about embracing your sex and then also personally and both macro level, what are you hopeful for that's going on in the world or hopeful for that's going on in your life besides your girlfriend?
Okay, we all know that's gonna be part of that answer. I'm just gonna say it. Y'all said besides, but I'm sorry. That has to be part of the answer. I would say regarding accepting my sex, especially these last few years. I could say reflecting. I would say if I were to talk to a younger version of myself, I feel like he would be happy with the man that I am today. I know I questioned that a lot as a young kid, especially since I didn't really have good male role models in my life. But since going through this process and meeting a lot of good men, I've been able to grow into the man that I want to. And I've learned that I don't have to be the most stereotypical masculine man to be a good man. Like I said, I was going to add this part. You can ask my girlfriend. She would say that I am a good man. But I would say what gives me hope moving forward is all the good work that I'm doing here with my friends here. And if everything goes well with my girlfriend, to eventually have a family and raise some children that I would be proud of have.
I hope none of them are born in the wrong body.
As long as they don't go on the internet, they're fine.
I mean, for me, some of the things that have made it most worth it are just the simple things. Now that I've accepted my sex, I feel like I can enjoy the simple things, the stereotypical things, without feeling like it makes me ridiculous or takes away from my character. Now I can, because at heart, as much of a tomboy as I can be at times, I really am a feminine woman. I can just enjoy those feminine things, and sometimes it's things just as simple as like wearing dresses or pink or makeup. I thought for years like I was never ever going to enjoy any of that, and now all of a sudden I'm 19, I'm getting my nails done every other week. I'm switching between different styles super rapidly. It's good fun. And as as a young woman, there's just a lot more room to be doing that. And you know, I had some interesting experiences while living under a male identity. I got to see like how male like relationship and friendship dynamics work. And I have to say, like those friendships that I had like in high school, there really is no friendship quite like a friendship between two boys. But the same also goes for women as well. There really is no connection like that between two women. Just that sense, that strong sense of camaraderie and having those healthy relationships with other women has just been so fun and so healing for me. And as for what gives me hope in the world right now, obviously, like we're making a lot of progress in the world with legislation, within these systems, and societally. But you know, I love coming home. I love just being home and looking at the world around me and seeing that, in spite of all of the crazy stuff that's going on in the world right now, for most people, life is just going on.
I'm going to flip it and answer the second part first. One of the things that has always kind of given me hope is every job I've had has involved working with children. However, particularly the jobs where I have been working with kids where they are away from technology and just seeing them interact with the world, because they have this kind of magic to them that technology kind of kills almost in a way. And seeing that magic grow and watching them interact with the world, watching them, you know, fall off the horse or trip on the trail and get back up and build and move on and become a stronger, more confident version of themselves. That gives me hope. And I've had the absolute privilege of seeing that in kids ages 7 to 17 and seeing them grow and become excited about new things and really just build themselves in a way that's away from the internet and away from the peer pressure and the negativity of society is one of the greatest privileges I have had in my life. And it truly does give me hope for the future. And then the thing that has helped me accept my sex.
Or the positive, kind of let me read, the best part
The best part.
of embracing your sex. That doesn't mean femininity.
I was going to say that's an even better thing for what I'm going to say.
That just means embracing your sex.
The best part about everything is knowing that the only thing I had to do to be a woman is wake up every day being born an adult human female. And anything else besides that is up to me for what I become, what I do, what I like, who I love, anything else in my life. That is not what makes me a woman. That's what makes me me. And the only thing that was ever required of me to be a woman was to just grow up as one. And I wish more girls would hear that, because I know as a tween teen, that's what I needed to hear.
Well, we're going to clip that and put that on the internet. But your kids aren't going to be on the internet, so they're never going to see that clip.
It best not be on social media.
Right. I have some questions from the audience, but first, before I really want to thank Vicki McKenna. Can we give a round of applause, please, for Vicki McKenna, who she welcomed us into this room, and one of the things that she said was about lawsuits. Lawsuits are really important. I think we were talking about hope for the future, and I don't believe, not that I'm not going to fight really hard to get legislation in Illinois, my home state. We have sponsors for that. I'm not sure that that's the way that we're going to shut down Lori's. I'm thinking that the way that we're going to shut it down is they're not going to be able to get insurance for the butchery that they're doing to children at Lori's Children's Hospital. So what I really want are lawsuits. And can you guys all raise your hand if you have a lawsuit pending right now? Yes. Do you have one, Laura? No? So we have, I think, 19 that we know of. Some are absolutely private. We know that they exist. We don't know the names. Some of them are filed anonymously. Transitionjustice.org is our site. It's a project of Partners for Ethical Care. Partners for Ethical Care created this project. We do business as Transition Justice. And again, we're all talking about volunteers. When people write in, they say, I've been harmed by gender medicine. They might still be trans-identified, but they've been harmed. And so we connect them with an attorney in their state, and then they kind of look at what are the statutes of limitations, can we help? And then our job as Partners for Ethical Care is to try to connect them with other supportive resources. If we can find them a doctor in their state, if we can find them some other supportive people in their lives, somebody to help them with their parents, for example, who may have been coerced into consenting to what happened to their own child. We want to be able to support those kinds of things. And that's what Transition Justice does. And we know that lawsuits are the other arm of how we're going to take down the affirmation model in the gender industry in general. So we're proud of that work, and I'm so happy. I couldn't have planted more lines inside Vicki McKenna's mouth about lawsuits. So I'm very happy with that. A few last questions just from the audience before our audience just disappears. Although you guys are so great. Can you all give yourselves a round of applause? You have been so supportive. And to be honest, the questions that I'm getting are exactly what I was looking for. So a few. Was it harder to tell family and friends that you wanted to detransition than it took you to tell them to transition? And you can do short answer, it's fine.
Absolutely. It felt like the emotional equivalent of slapping my mom in the face because I knew that information would hurt her. And I cried so much during that phone call. It was, yeah.
I mean, it was the exact same for me. I couldn't even bear to face my own mom and my dad because I knew that it would hurt them just as much. And I had no idea what my life was going to look like from there. And it was the thought, even the thought of it was embarrassing because it was like, well, everybody knows me as a boy. I look like a boy. I sound like a boy. I have a deeper voice than almost every single one of my male peers. How am I ever going to go back?
Yeah, it was definitely much harder to tell my family I was detransitioning. I technically detransitioned in 2019, medically speaking, but I did not tell anyone until the end of 2020, almost 2021. And I will say most of them were shocked when they saw me again.
For me, it was about the same because I didn't have a good relationship with my parents during the transition or detransition.
This kind of goes along with the next question, which is, I was talking about family and friends, but this is a question about a person who has a 17-year-old daughter, and she has trans-identified friends or people kind of in this arena, and she kind of wants to know what can she do as a supportive friend. The reason I'm asking the question in this order is you said it's a little bit difficult to get out of the identity, much harder to get out of it than to get into it. So I'm wondering what you might suggest to this 17-year-old.
She's trans-identified or she's considering detransition?
She has friends who are trans-identified, and she wants to know what she can do to be a supportive friend.
I'd say it's difficult because on one hand, being friends with people who are in that mindset is probably not healthy for that person. So I would say it's unfortunate, like the hard reality is that it's very unlikely that you're gonna remain friends with those people or even should remain friends with them. However, I'm not saying abandon your friends, but I'm saying the reality is that if you wanna be a good friend, you need to be honest and you need to, you know, state your concern and then accept that you cannot control what that other person does and say, you know, I'll be here for you if you wanna talk to me in the future, or you know, maybe whether it be like in just in the future of their friendship or in the future as if they're not having a relationship anymore and if they ever want to reach out, leave that door open. But I would honestly say it's very unlikely that you'll remain friends with those people.
Repeat the question. I'm sorry. I'm drawing that.
So you have a 17-year-old child who has friends who are kind of influenced by trans culture, trans-identified themselves. How does that 17-year-old help their friends?
That is such a tough question. I'm gonna be honest, because like I said earlier, there's no cookie cutter way to deal with this. I know every parent has their own different routes of doing this. Some of them take their kids off the internet completely, move them out of schools, move out of the city, move out of the country.
But the question is, a friend influencing another friend.
A friend influence.
Not influencing, but what does she do when she's watching somebody truly struggle?
Well, I would say if you're a true friend, honesty is the best policy. Is it gonna burn? Yeah, but I think being honest is what matters. They might hate you in the beginning, but if they ever come around, they'll be grateful for your honesty.
So, one of my best friends now was my best friend from high school, who has watched me go through this entire process. And one of the reasons that she is still my best friend is because she was someone who I felt comfortable embarrassing myself in front of. And that's what admitting your detransitioning is. It is one of the most embarrassing moments in your life to have to go, yeah, that thing I thought I was for like a pretty significant portion of my life, yeah, that was wrong. And I know I told everyone around me that that was the truth, but turns out I was really wrong about that. Especially as a teenager, that is like an alarmingly embarrassing thing to have to tell people. And the reason the friends I have told who have been by me throughout this entire thing and are still by me, the reason we are still friends is because they allowed me to come forward with that rather embarrassing realization and were just someone who was there for me. These were not people who were, wearing the rainbow pins and the trans flag pins and being overly affirmative. These were people who were my friends because they were friends with me. Not my gender identity. They were friends with me as a person. And that is the best thing you can do for, especially if you're in a situation like 17, you are in high school still. There is so many other like complicated social webs that go on during that time. I think everyone in this room can acknowledge that. And the best thing you can do when someone is struggling is befriend them as who they are, not what they are, because what they are, especially in contexts like this, can change.
So that's it. I'm done with my questions. I want to read some comments off of the cards. One is, thank you for your bravery. And another one is, all of your stories inspire us to speak up and to speak the truth because you are doing that and you have modeled that for others. So thank you. I'd like to give a round of applause, please, to our panelists. Thank you. And thank you all for coming. And please, you're actually not that far from Chicago, so I expect to see all of you and your friends in Bolingbrook on June 5th. Thank you.